Okay, today I want to talk to you all about CARs. Not those kind of cars. I'm talking about controlled articular rotations. Don't worry, you don't have to remember exactly what they're called, but you should at least know why it's important to do them and how to do them correctly. So you might have seen people in the gym swinging their arms and their legs and doing all kinds of random stuff to warm up. Now there is a time and place for movements like that, like in the trash. I'm kidding. The difference is CARs are actually more intentional. And here are some of the benefits of doing CARs. Number one, they maintain your joint range of motion and integrity. As the saying goes, use it or lose it. Let's just say, for argument's sake, you stopped reaching for things overhead. Your nervous system, i.e. your brain, likes to take the path of least resistance. And if you stopped doing this action, then your brain pretty much just says, well, if you're not going to use this range of motion, why am I going to waste resources trying to maintain this particular range? And this is why when you suddenly go into ranges of motion or positions that you're not used to being in or haven't been in a long time, injuries happen. Number two, CARs promote synovial fluid. So think of synovial fluid as like the lubrication for your joints. And your joints are avascular, meaning that they don't get an adequate amount of blood supply in comparison to your muscles. And the only way that your joints can become lubricated is by way of movement. So every time you do a CAR, you're hydrating your joints and providing that lubrication. Number three, CARs provide joint control and awareness. Now you might notice that when you first start doing CARs, it might feel kind of foreign and a little bit janky. That's because you don't have the proper joint control yet because you haven't put in enough reps. But with each articulation of the joint, you start to cultivate that joint awareness and that proprioception. And this, of course, has carryover in anything that requires any kind of functional movement. And then finally, CARs can be used as an assessment tool. I use CARs often as an assessment tool for my clients to assess how functional their joints are. So for instance, if they go into a particular range of motion and they start to notice any kind of pain, it's often an indication that there's some kind of dysfunction happening in the joint. And it just kind of gives me feedback and a more objective measure in terms of what's going on and what I need to treat. Lastly, I want to talk about compensations when it comes to CARs. When you're doing your CARs, you want to make sure that you're isolating specifically the joint that you're focusing on. So when you're doing your shoulder CAR, you ideally just want to be moving at the glenohumeral joint. But what ends up happening as a compensation oftentimes, especially when I'm prescribing this to newer clients, is they will compensate by moving their spine. They'll start to rotate out and they'll start to involve the spine. So now they're going into rotation. So they've now cheated the movement to give the illusion that they have more range than they actually do. So ways in which we can prevent that is by using a wall to keep ourselves honest. So ideally, if we're doing a shoulder CAR, basically we want to go adjacent to a wall, and then you're going to go into your CAR. And the objective here is that you want to keep the center of your chest facing forward as opposed to turning to face the wall as you do your shoulder CAR. So I'm cheating right now because I've run out of wall here. So ideally you'd have a full wall. And the same thing goes for the hip when doing hip CARs. Typically what you'll see as a compensation is people will often go into a hip hike and involve the pelvis to cheat the movement of the hip articulation. For example, if I'm assessing the rotation of my hip, specifically internal rotation, I'm going to show you what my true internal rotation is, and then I'm going to show you what a compensation looks like. When I go into hip internal rotation, I'm going to go all the way into my end range here. So that's my true end range of motion. But watch what happens when I start to cheat and involve the pelvis. So if I hike my pelvis up, now that gives me more hip internal rotation, or at least it gives the illusion of more hip internal rotation. But that's not my true range. That's just a compensation, because I'm now involving the pelvis and taking that pelvis along for the ride. So generally what you would do when you're doing your hip CAR, you start and you transition into your hip CAR here. And what I often get my clients to do is drop the hip slightly before going into internal rotation. So that way you're not forcing yourself to hike that hip up and give the illusion of more internal rotation than you actually have access to. Anyway, I hope this was helpful and informative. And if it was, share it, like it, follow for more information, and I'll see you in the next video.